Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the channel where we talk about crypto and economics and lots of other fun things. Do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification button as well so that you do not miss a thing. But first of all, let's take a look at Bitcoin hash ribbons, and historically every time that Bitcoin hash ribbons have flashed a buy signal. Now, I did make a short form video talking about this. I retweeted it on my X account. Give me a follow on XWW Bitcoin, by the way. You can see a link in the description of this video. But I want to point something out a little bit different than what I talked about in my short video. So in the short video, I pointed out that exactly what Polaris_XBT says here, which is that this hash ribbon signal, the buy signal, the Bitcoin hash ribbon signal just flashed a buy signal, hash ribbon indicator flashed a buy signal. And the last time this happened in a clear uptrend was, in late 2022. And you can see in late 2022, Bitcoin climbed aggressively higher and eventually peaked at $69,000 throughout 2022. And here we are again in a clear uptrend with Bitcoin, the hash ribbon indicator flashing a buy signal. And will we have something similar throughout the next several months? It's certainly possible. But the thing that I want to draw your attention to, so I said that in my short form video, the thing that I want to draw your attention to in this video in particular is just look at every time Bitcoin's hash ribbon indicator flashed a buy signal, whether it was in a clear uptrend or not. Now, there's certainly times of chop. There's probably the worst case scenario here was in late 2022 when we still had a bit lower to go. But did we really? Because I mean, that last dump was triggered by the FTX collapse. But other than that, I mean, really every time you give it enough time and Bitcoin has gotten much higher, especially in 2024. I mean, it was right at that August 5th bottom in 2024. And then the next time later in 2024 that we climbed higher. The last time this happened before recently was below $75,000 for Bitcoin. So this is historically a very reliable indicator for Bitcoin going higher over the short or medium term and not lower. And so we should have a lot of confidence right now. Yesterday was a red day for Bitcoin. I know that sentiment is very low, especially because a lot of people hold altcoins, but this is a good sign. It's a good sign for movement up at some point soon. You know, does it have to be tomorrow? Does it have to be next week? Not necessarily, but at some point that this would cause us to, not cause us, but lead us, that we would eventually be going higher from this. So be patient as always. Patience is rewarded, especially if you're holding Bitcoin. No guarantees for altcoins, but moving on back to liquidity again. So global liquidity from Alpha Extract here has reached a new yearly high and Bitcoin has followed suit. Many debate the cause of Bitcoin's rise, but we believe global liquidity drove it, as evidenced by our intraday update last week. With supportive fundamentals, Bitcoin could see another leg up, catching sideline investors waiting for a dip. You guys have seen the projections, right? You've seen $130,000 in June, $140 in July, $160 in August. We'll see. I'm a little bit skeptical, but certainly there's some sort of correlation between global liquidity and Bitcoin. So Alpha Extract, again, our outlook for 2025 remains unchanged from last week's update, especially after the latest Bitcoin move and the fact that Google search for Bitcoin remains at bear market lows. What a time we're in where a lot of people are just really down and Bitcoin has hit a new all-time high. There's another chart here. You can see weekly change in global liquidity. Nothing huge. I mean, of recent, there was a significant change in 2023 and a decent change in 2024. Of recent, not a huge change, but we're nearing back. We're pretty close to back at that late 2021 peak, which not coincidentally was pretty close to Bitcoin's peak last cycle. So moving on. Now, got to be mindful of this, but this is not necessarily a bearish thing. So from Glassnode here, spending by older Bitcoin holders is heating up again. Aggregate volume from the 1 to 5 year cohorts just hit 4.02 billion, the highest since February. Older coins are on the move. Now that, again, that might sound bearish, but you got to understand this always happens. And it's actually, you know, the transferring from long-term holders to short-term holders is what it typically peaks at the peak of a bull run. And so if it's going to continue to rise, that's not a cause for concern. Now from Glassnode, again, we can see the 3 to 5 year cohort breakdown is 2.16 billion. The 2 to 3 year cohort is 1.41 billion. The 1 to 2 year cohort is 450 million. In total, this is the 5th largest 1 to 5 year spending spike of the cycle, driven mostly by older Bitcoin holders. And so again, I think a lot of people, if you follow Glassnode, because I'll share a lot of their charts. I'm a big fan of Glassnode. A lot of people might be like, oh no, does that mean it's over? No, that does not necessarily mean it's over. This could rise significantly. I mean, I talked about on my live stream yesterday, somebody asked me what would cause me to sell my Bitcoin, and $110,000 is not a compelling enough price for me to sell my Bitcoin. If we saw Bitcoin by the end of this year get to $500,000, that big of a spike, oh yeah, I'm selling my Bitcoin because I'll have a lot of confidence that I'll be able to buy it lower. But if Bitcoin's just going to steadily climb over the remainder of the year, then no. I mean, there's no specific number that I have in mind that I'd be like, okay, now's the time to sell my Bitcoin. So moving on, another thing that I would say is bullish. I mean, the bears are just really, they're not giving up. And so Bitcoin funding rate just flipped negative again. Shorts are quietly building across the top 10 with BNB and ADA showing signs of pressure. Notably, Solana now ranks as the 6th lowest funding rate among all assets. You can track on Glassnode Studio. I don't know if that's behind a paywall or anything like that. But, you know, Bitcoin is negative, Ethereum's positive. Tether doesn't count. XRP is barely positive. Binance negative. Solana negative. What else do we have? Dogecoin in the positive. Cardano negative. So, man, bears have not yet capitulated. I'll be nervous. I'll be more nervous about a peak when bears capitulate. I'm really surprised that they try to short Binance. Binance is just, it's been a relatively strong crypto. So good luck to you, all you bears. You know, now I will admit that there's some things looking at the chart that I'm just curious to see how it plays itself out, that maybe I would consider entering some shorts. It's not like that would be a new, that I'd be believing in a new trend. We are far from the breaking of an uptrend here for Bitcoin or for altcoins. Moving on, GameStop has purchased 4,710 Bitcoin. Okay, somebody asked me, this is the reason why I'm bringing this up, is not because I care about the news of GameStop buying that much Bitcoin for what? That's $4 billion. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's $4 billion, isn't it? 4710. All right, I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going to do this in real time during the video. 4710 times, I'll just say 108,000 times 108,000 equals 5086. All right, 50 million, or 508 million, excuse me. So not 4 billion. I was off by a decimal. That's still a significant amount. Somebody asked me during my live stream why would institutions be buying Bitcoin when it's so high right now? And the thing that I would tell you guys is there's no guarantees that the same old thing is happening right now that has always happened, that it's going to happen, where Bitcoins must go down 85% in the bear market. For the time being, I'm going to operate under the assumption that that's what's going to happen. But I've shared with you guys multiple charts, multiple bits of information indicating that things, if there's ever a time to argue that this time is going to be different, now's the time. I mean, given how much volume, how much Bitcoin is getting scooped up by institutions now in comparison to any point in Bitcoin's history, and the fact that projections for 2026 and 2027 are actually higher than 2025 for the accumulation of Bitcoin, maybe for now, or maybe this is it, unless, you know, we see some kind of black swan event. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't have to, just in the same way that, you know, we were supposed to have this mega bullish 2025 starting on January 1st and it didn't happen. It doesn't have to happen that we would see Bitcoin go down 80%. And speaking of DCAing, here's a strategy for DCAing that I think is actually not a bad idea, actually a really good idea from Axel Adler here. So in a bull market environment, the smart DCA dollar cost averaging concept delivers impressive results. All 4 buy triggers of the current cycle have produced a positive ROI. The toughest was trigger 1, the bear cycle bottom at 16K. So what are we looking at here? We are looking at, I believe at least, this dotted line. You can see the dotted line there where the price goes under the dotted line. That's short-term cost holder basis. Short-term holder cost basis, excuse me. When short-term holders are underwater on their Bitcoin holdings, that is historically a good time to DCA Bitcoin. And you see bear market bottom, end of 2022 going into early 2023. You can see just the almost ending of this 200-day chop from in the third quarter of 2023. You can see towards the end of that chop in 2024, same deal several times here where short-term holders were in the negative. And then of recent, number 4, same deal. So what does that mean? I mean, does that mean that you should have been DCAing all throughout that bear market in 2022? In the end, it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world given where Bitcoin's price is now. But if you did not DCA during these specific times when short-term holders were in profit, then ultimately I think that works out better than just straight up DCAing. So interesting thing to look at. Look it up. Google. Some hopium. Crypto bros, we're never getting another alt season. No one is going to buy alt. Bitcoin dominance is 70%, bro. Honestly, ETH is dead. And meanwhile, the others chart. Now, the others chart does not include ETH. It doesn't include the top 10 cryptos, but the others chart is looking pretty bullish. I mean, we're seeing a break of the downtrend. We are still in an uptrend, and we're seeing MACD have a bullish crossover, which is what this is pointing out. And when that happens, look at historically. This is a weekly chart in others dominance. Look at historically what happens when that happens. Historically, what happens every time is we see significant upward movement in altcoins. So will that happen again this time? It would make sense that it would happen again this time. No guarantees, but it is more in your favor that something like that would happen. Guilherme Tavares, I love his stuff. He doesn't talk about crypto. He talks about stocks. But another comparison between the 1990s blow-off top and the current period we are in. So remember, 1998, we had the Russian crisis, the LTCM crash. I don't know what LTCM stands for. I'll be honest with you. I was 16 in 1998, but I do remember in 1998 gasoline being very cheap, like under $1 a gallon. And that was amazing, especially I started driving in 1998. And so what happened here in 1998 was that there was a lot of fear that it was over. But then we had one more move in 1999 to the peak in December of 1999 until the proverbial S hit the F. And here we are in 2025. Same deal, the terrorist crash, lots of fear. Will we have a V-shaped recovery? And will we? I don't know. But S&P 500 priced in the M2 money supply certainly tells a story in terms of what the true peak was for the stock market. And late 90s was a much more significant peak than pre-2008 crash or anything that we've seen since the COVID crash or anything we've seen since then. So late 90s, congrats boomers, was the absolute peak of the stock market. Would we see something similar happen here where the stock market priced in M2 has another blow off top similar to 1999 and then it would be over? That makes a lot of sense to me. But we are in an interesting point right now where we need to figure out where we're going to go. Are we aligning more with 1998, or are we aligning more with 2022, or with 2000 or 2008? And that's going to dictate, I think, a lot of where Bitcoin goes. Okay, moving on. And this is not what you think it is. All right, this is a really fascinating perspective in terms of mathematics, and should you bet on something like this? So Polymarket breaking, Jesus Christ returning this year, 4% chance the odds have risen. And so here was my thought process. My initial response to this was, all right, listen, I've read the Bible plenty, and I can tell you with a great deal of confidence as somebody who believes in the Bible, Jesus Christ is not returning in 2025 or anytime soon. That post-mill, if any of you know what I'm talking about, I'm a post-millennialist. But what's the reason why I'm saying this? My initial thought to this was to go on Polymarket and to just put money into this and for sure get my, I put 97 cents. I think that my reward would be $1, something like that. And so, all right, now it's at a 3% chance, but is that worth it? Is that worth it when the US dollar continues to lose value the way it's been losing value? Actually, it might not actually even be worth it to do something like that. Believe it or not, to put this into a guaranteed thing, because when would you get paid out? You'd obviously get paid out when the clock strikes midnight, January 1st, 2026. And when it was at 4%, that means a 7.07% annualized return. That's okay. At 3%, do you want a 7.07%? And then if for some reason you're wrong, trust me, your problems are going to be much bigger if Jesus returns in 2025 than they are if he doesn't return. Like losing money will be the least of your worries, because Jesus Christ returning in 2025, he's going to be returning with a sword if that were to happen. So get down on your knees and pray, literally, if something like that happens. But just a fascinating aspect into this is more of a commentary on the US dollar, that I don't have confidence in the US dollar that my betting on this would actually produce a decent return. It's so funny, this world that we live in. My goodness, man. In other news that might depress me, or I don't know, this is just, it's sad, but it's another sign of the times, right? Geiger Capital. In 1983, almost 80% of 30-year-olds were married, and 50% already owned a home. Today, it's 45% are married and 30% own a home. The collapse of healthy society in the middle class, a direct result of catastrophic policy and deficit spending. Our leaders borrowed prosperity from future generations. Amen to that. And if you want to know more as to why this is happening, it's not because of corporate greed. Shut up, stupid commentary about corporate greed. It's about the US dollar. And look up for yourself, WTF happened in 1971, and that will show you what happened when we lost sound money. And it's going to continue to get worse until we have sound money. Does Bitcoin fix this? We will see. Now, at the moment that I'm making this video, I'm a little concerned, but this might end up just being a wick, so maybe you'll know tomorrow. Or it might be just a fake out daily close below this trend line here. But we're not talking about a lower high or a lower low. We're just talking about a break of the trend line. So what does that mean? We've seen plenty of assets break trend lines and then back test those trend lines going higher. So let's say something like this happened. Bitcoin, let's say Bitcoin loses this trend line, which a lot of people are paying attention to, but then continues to rise and maybe gets rejected at this trend line from a few years ago, but breaks through that and then just continues to get rejected. It could do that before moving down. That's in the cards. Or, this is just a wick, but I'm not going to sweat about this now. It's just something to pay attention to. I've shared with you a lot of reasons to be bullish short term. If we were to see Bitcoin do something like this, put in a lower low, I'd be a little bit more concerned that on the next move up, it would put in a lower high, and then we would start a new downtrend. Too early to call. All right, I'm not sweating anything right now. I mean, looking at Bitcoin dominance looks like maybe it's heading in the right direction. Ethereum, for the time being, is holding up okay. So let's continue to monitor things, and let's not worry about it right at this exact moment. But be prepared to de-risk a little bit if the market communicates that to us. All right, so anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful rest of your week, and I will most certainly be seeing you in another video. Peace!